Welcome to the stage, Nolie and the crew. A tech is paradise where the nerds break through. With gadgets and the gossip and lighting up the scene. A point of view so fresh, it's like a techie dream. Plug in your ears, let the knowledge flow.
My name is Nolie MacDonald, and I have a very fun episode in store for us. Also one that I think is important that we discuss, and it's on how we are using AI in particularly the music industry. And I have a very special guest today. His name is Michael Wansley, aka the Wanz, or is it just Wanz?
It's the Wanz.
The Wanz, okay. And we actually have known each other for about 12 years now, from when I had my musician days as well. And we never got the pleasure to performing together, but hopefully we'll get to do that one of these days. But for today, I'm excited to kind of dive in and get your point of view on how you think AI is impacting the music industry and the ramifications on artistic ownership, as well as how this will play out potentially as we move forward, and what we could do to proactively just make sure that we're being cognizant of the impact that it could have. Would you care to share about what kind of got you into the music industry, and then also talk about what your experience was that kind of took you off with Thrift Shop, which you're kind of most known for?
I've been singing all my life. My very first memory is singing on a schoolyard in Anchorage, Alaska in 1967. It's the very first thing I can remember. I can't think of a day that I wasn't doing music in some way, shape, or form, whether I was singing or banging pots and pans or whatever. Went to college, went all the way through high school singing, went all through church choir, all that crap. Moved to Seattle in '86 when I ran out of money from college. I was going to be a music teacher, but didn't complete the degree because I had a better idea. I learned how to make money working at a bar over there in Ellensburg, where I went to school. So I put some business classes with my music classes to make a music business degree that they didn't have, but I ran out of money. And when I got over here, I just immersed myself into the music scene, and the people that you know of as Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, those were guys that I've known for a long time. We used to hang, they were my drinking buddies. I hung out with them, and all of us had the same goal. They went a little farther, and I thought, okay, great. So, 2008 or so, I figured out there's nobody as old as I am, or that looks like me, or has a low voice like me out there. So this dream that I've had all my life, I had to get rid of, which almost killed me. I mean, it was that bad. And I dug myself out of that hole by starting to record and do stuff by myself, and started picking up side gigs, which would be recording hooks for rappers. Because that was back in the day when rappers couldn't sing. And one night, the producer that I've been working with for a long time called me and said there was a guy who was looking for a singer who sounded like Nate Dogg. And that was something that I could do easily. And I went, and that was the introduction to Ben Haggerty, aka Mackmore, and Ryan Lewis. And they explained what they wanted, and the first thing out of my mouth is what you hear on the record.
Really?
I'm gonna pop some tags. Only got $20 in my pocket. And
that's amazing. Yeah. So you came up with the line.
So that was, the words were written by Macklemore's brother, but I came up with the melody.
Okay.
And the whole recording session for me, I spent about 45 minutes in the booth, and they cut me a check and I left. And nobody thought anything of it.
Yeah.
A couple months later, it's like, you want to be in the video? Sure, why not? And then a month later, when the video dropped, it just kind of lit the world on fire. And I asked to do like the Northwest gigs. There were like 8 gigs in just the Northwest. So I took some PTO and started to do those, and it came to the end of my little run, and the next gig was in San Francisco at the Fillmore.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being 9 years old, 10 years old, listening to AM radio Saturday night broadcasts live from the Fillmore. All these bands that you've heard of, Cream, The Doors, Mamas and the Papas, everybody played that room. And here we were playing a sold out show there. And it was so heavy for me that this was actually happening. I started to cry. I broke down in tears. And at that moment, this whole thrift shop thing for me became real. And the next day I quit my job. And then I was on the tour for 2.5 years. And in 2.5 years, every single dream that I had ever had come true.
What was the biggest venue that you ever performed at?
The biggest venue that we ever, well, there are actually two that were about the same. We played during the week of the Final Four when they were in Atlanta in 2013. No, 2013. And that was walking on stage in front of 68,000 people. And later on that summer, we did the Wireless Festival in London. And that was walking out on stage in front of 75,000 people.
What was funny is when that music video came out, I was the 11th person on YouTube to watch it. And I remember thinking to myself, how am I the 11th person to watch this? Because, you know, it's funny and it was just like brilliantly made. And but then I checked back like an hour later and it had already taken off. I was like, whoa.
I kind of thought something was going to happen because about a week before it dropped, I was surfing around YouTube and found Macklemore live at some festival in Chicago, outside of Chicago somewhere. And it's somebody in the crowd filming him and he was talking about it. And so it started, and just from when it started, the people who were filming it started to get excited. So much so that they had to, you know, before he even started spitting his verse, they cut it off because they were just moving too much. And I was like, what was that? What was that? Wait, what was it? He came back from that and said, just wait, Wanz. There's nothing like hearing 1,000 Germans singing your hook.
I can only imagine that.
I had no idea. I'd never been on the road. I'd never had an experience. I mean, and
you were working in tech too at that time.
Right? I was working in tech, and I thought that was going to be my life because I'd totally given up on, you know, the dream. I mean, I had a conversation with one of the drummers that didn't make it with Pearl Jam after he had a run with them, and he was trying to talk me out of it. You know, it's all this, it's too much of that. And the songs that I was writing at the time, I couldn't find a lane for. I couldn't seem to get any traction. I didn't really know how to market myself and go look for opportunities outside of Seattle. Mm-hmm. So I was just relegated to doing stuff for my Facebook crowd because, I mean, I had elementary, junior high, high school, college people, and now I was getting Facebook friends from the music business. That was fine. Mm-hmm. As long as I was creating, I was happy. As long as I was writing, I was happy. And I was playing bass in a Blue-Eyed Soul band and singing backgrounds, and you know, that was enough. It was enough.
I've always found your voice very gospel, very deep, you know, like very soulful.
At 51 years old, I was okay. And then all hell broke loose. And all of a sudden it's like I'm coming back almost the end of October. I don't have a job anymore. And I don't go anywhere until for another week. That week comes and I fly out to Philadelphia, do a show in Philadelphia, get on the bus because the bus is going to Boston, wake up, step out of the bus, and we're parked right behind the Green Monster. I've seen it on TV. Mm-hmm. Played the House of Blues that night. I mean, you know, I have story after story about that. I'd never been to New York before, always afraid to go there. So many bloody people. And the hotel we were staying at, I went outside, I was looking around, and there's Madison Square Garden, 2 blocks right there.
Yeah, I actually just visited New York for the first time last year, so I know how you
Yeah.
feel. But
I left the tour in 2015 and went back to tech and was testing at a company that got bought by another big company. And then I got laid off the beginning of 2023 and hadn't advanced my testing skills. So I've been kind of living off oxygen, living off my 401k and stock options, and I'm trying to find another job.
yeah. Well, I mean, in light of that, and I think unemployment is something that is very much on a lot of people's minds these days, in light of what the conversation today is about, which is AI and how it's going to impact people's livelihood. And it does touch every industry, but I do want to focus on how it could impact the music industry for this episode.
Sure.
When did you first notice that AI was coming onto the scene and could be something that you were worried about?
It first came up for me in a discussion down in LA. I go to the Grammys every year that I can. And so about 3 years ago, it came up. There was talk about it, right? Because of the potential. And it was different than like the conversation when Napster was brand new. File sharing was the enemy. This was something that directly affected artists, because of the level of, it was very, very crude 2 and 3 years ago compared to now. Now it's like all over my TikTok or reels that I'm seeing, there are little babies who are speaking with perfect diction. Their mouths are moving perfectly. It's all AI generated. And last year I started training myself to get voiceover work. I can't get voiceover work because
it's that industry now. Yeah.
Right. Because, I've been replaced. There are a few instances, like I ran into a friend last night and he's going to try to use the notoriety of, I have a Grammy award winning, blah, 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 blah. Right. But probably what's going to happen is I'll go in and do some talking and they'll load it into a machine and then they'll be able to use my voice for anything. And so how am I going to monetize that? How is any artist going to do that? How is any artist who sits in their abode or, their bedroom and writes a song, how are they going to use this as a tool? Because that's what I keep hearing. I keep hearing that it's a tool. And, I'm trying to draw parallels. It's really difficult. I can't use microphones. I can't use tape recording versus now digital recording. I understand the whole evolution of it, but when it comes to being replaced by something that's not human, it's very interesting to ponder when you are a creator who uses your voice.
Right. I think in my personal opinion, what I anticipate happening is that a lot of singers or musicians will also have to become producers in a way and use AI more from a production standpoint because, for example, Timbaland, he actually just started a new AI record label. I don't know if you knew about that.
Yep. And there is a local sync company that leverages AI for music supervisors to be able to find the type of music they're looking for film and commercials and television shows and whatever. But see, that's not what I worry about.
Yeah.
There are scrupulous people and then there are a whole bunch of not scrupulous people, right? It's the difference between a pharmacist and a dope dealer. And the dope dealer's not going to play by the rules. They have a different code that they live under and they don't care. All they care about is the money that they make. And that's the thing. Yeah,
legislation, having consequences for cloning a voice, right?
Yeah, but see, how are you, the system, a year and a half ago, teachers had to prepare themselves because kids were now using it to write papers. So they had to figure out, how do I spot and how do I spot that they've used the tool, and how do I evaluate how they use the tool? Because you could have the tool write your whole paper, or you can have the tool research things for you and then you create the paper.
Right.
And I've even talked to a journalist friend of mine at one of the TV stations here in Seattle, and he I asked him, how is AI changing everything? Because I don't really have to write a story. I can put my face to something, but all I have to do is type in what I discovered. It will write my script for me. And, you know, I understand how progress is going to work. I mean, it's always evolving. I've been in tech for almost 25 years. And I remember working at kind of a mom and pop store, and it was a really big deal building a computer. It was a really big deal being able to record music onto a hard drive of a computer. It was a really, really big deal to be able to take it on your laptop and to be able to work remotely, share that stuff with somebody else and collaborate that way. Well, see, now I'm not exactly sure what the path is going to be or what it could be, because just like with every other technology, there's an upside and there's a downside. And in the music business, the history is just not that great when it comes to innovation. The industry always resists it, and people find their way around it. The people who get screwed are the artists.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it's always been, and that's the way it's gonna be.
I mean, I kind of think the same thing happened with streaming when that came about too, because, you know, one actually could make money from their music, and then streaming came along.
The whole thing of it is that, you know, everyone has to adapt to the changes in technology. I mean, file sharing was not the enemy, but the industry made it the enemy. Just like they made copying things onto CDs, cassette tapes, the enemy. I mean, if you go back in the history, 45 records, when I was a kid, that's all girls bought. They bought a little 45, and, you know, you can go back and you can see the little record player with the little thing in the center, and you put the 45 record in it, and they put stacks of them on there. The music business hated that, but that's what the consumers demanded, right? And the consumer always wins. And what the industry would never do is figure out how to compensate the artists.
Right.
Right. I've always said, oh, well, we don't want people making mixtapes. Why don't you get with the people who manufacture cassette tapes and have them add a surcharge on that goes to the record industry so they can pay the artists? Same thing with CDs, rewritable CDs, any kind of storage, right? It's not that hard, but for some reason the music industry is slow on the uptake. So that's why, you know, terrestrial radio is dying. It's dying, and pretty soon there won't be any need for DJs. Pretty soon there won't be a need for any humans to do anything other than maybe live shows. But I mean, I can see it now. And
maybe it'll bring a resurgence of live music. That could be an upside that comes out of this, because I do think actually the more, and I can already tell even with myself, because I create a lot of AI generated content, but I will tell you, when your whole feed is AI, sometimes you look forward to real content, right? And so I think that will happen where people get so bombarded by it that they crave authenticity in the real thing.
And that's what I'm finding now, even in the voiceover world, in the voiceover space that I'm trying to get into. There are people who have gone completely AI, but it's almost, because the technology is going to catch up. Just like laser discs, when, you know, only rich people could afford laser discs. Remember? And I mean, in college, it was like you were middle class or lower if you had a VCR player, but if you had a laser disc, you were bougie, right? Because it was higher quality and so on and so forth. The technology is always evolving, and the thing that gets forgotten is the human factor. So it's like, great, I am in a band with 4 people and they all play the instruments. Pretty soon it's going to be whoever either sings the song, writes the song, and they won't need anybody else. So the whole concept of it is it becomes, you know, the old school of it all, having a band that actually plays their own instruments will become niche instead of what is now mainstream.
Right.
Right. So, you know, how are people going to monetize that? Don't know. it's one of the good parts about, you know, being in my 60s now. I won't have to deal with it for very long, to be honest with you. And I'm just trying to find a space where I can get in, because there's no substitute for experience, right?
Right.
So these kids they have the technology, but they don't have the experience. So maybe there's a place and there's a way, and that's why I keep telling myself it's a tool. It's a tool. And you have to figure out, how is someone going to use this hammer or screwdriver? How are they going to use it? And how can you get in on helping them use it, because you know how to build things, right?
Right.
Because you know, the day that artificial intelligence becomes aware and conscious, like it does in all the movies, you know what I mean? I mean, Skynet, that whole Skynet thing from Terminator, it doesn't surprise me. And I'm like, everybody's saying it's a good thing. How come it's not a good thing? It never turns out well for us.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean, I know that we're kind of in a world where we have to, you know, adapt or die. That's kind of the scenario. And I have, you know,
It's always been that way.
adapted. That's what I've chosen to do, because
Oh
otherwise
yeah, we've had this conversation. And you know, I think of my parents, you know, the innovations. When I was 8 years old, my parents drove us across country to my grandmother's house in Jacksonville, Florida, and she lived in this 2-bedroom house. It was tiny, and it had a hallway running the length of the house. And in the middle of the hallway, in the middle of the stretch of the hallway, was a little cutout, and there was a little chair with a little desk. I asked, what is that for? That's where the telephone was. Because my grandmother thought that having the 2-piece phone was, you know, the earpiece and the speaking microphone piece, that was a big deal. And she lived long enough to see like a BlackBerry.
right.
Right. So my parents grew up with that 2-piece phone, watched it go to the 1-piece phone, rotary, to touch, to radar phones in the house, to cell phones, personal computers. Right.
Yep.
So that
And now you can do it with your glasses. I have my smart glasses on. That's the next thing, right?
yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't bought those. I've still never endeavored. I haven't taken an afternoon to figure out how to use them, and I just haven't taken the time to do it because I'm too busy doing other things, like trying to find a job.
I know.
But
Well, I will
anyway.
say one thing with music and these glasses. I have loved being able to go hiking, and I want to hear the nature sounds. I want to hear what's around me, but I also do love to take in some good tunes. And when you wear, you know, earbuds or headphones, you're cut off from your environment. So that is one thing I have liked about the smart glasses, is that the speakers are in front of the ear, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And the second thing is, since it does have AI built in, if I was traveling internationally, it can look at signs or a menu and translate it in real time so that I can communicate better. So, you know, those are some very tangible benefits that
I have never said that there are not benefits to the advancement of technology. I only have questions, right? And when it personally affects me as a songwriter, as a musician, as a creator, it's not because I hate the technology, it's because I'm trying to find my place. It's the not scrupulous people. It's the pirates. It's the thieves. It's, you know, those are the people who make it harder for everybody else, because they have no concern about anyone else. People get all messed up about the whole regulation of thing, and it's like, well, the regulation is to protect the larger, you know, the majority, not the minority. How does a teacher use AI to spot other AI generated material? Because it's not about whether they used it or not, it's how they used it, because it's a tool.
Right.
This is my personal opinion. How do you use the tool? How does it help you? I mean, you know, I'm old enough to remember that it was like hammer, nail. Now it's pick up a gun, click, 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 right? Innovation. It's gonna happen. Been that way since fire in the wheel, and wearing skins. I understand that part. The thing that I don't understand are the people who want to do it for the wrong reasons, and how are we going to find them? Because somebody's going to go back, and they're going to get a sample of Prince's voice, whose birthday was what, day before yesterday? His birthday was day before yesterday. They're going to go back and sample a Prince voice, and then put a beat to it, make a whole thing, and then try to sell it off as a Prince song, so they can make millions of dollars, because he's got hundreds of millions of fans.
AI generated content, like basically enforcing some sort of watermark or some
Right.
identifier.
Right.
Help.
That's
I don't think it'll solve the problem, but those things are drastically needed right now, and they're nowhere to be seen.
I mean, it's a great idea. Look at Getty Images. Zillions of people taking pictures, right? But Getty has a system by which they can, number one, have control over what content they have, so that the person who takes the picture can be compensated for their efforts.
Mhm.
Nobody likes to work for free. Nobody.
Right.
I mean, believe me, when file sharing was a really big thing, my then 13-year-old son and I argued all the time, because he could get music online for free. And I would come out of my studio in my second bedroom going, yeah, but what about me, who created all that? How am I going to get paid? And we'd go back and forth. So this is another link in the chain of time. And I think for all the upside, I think it should be considered. Not necessarily the rule, but I think it should be considered how to keep an eye on the bad actors, because that's one thing that's common in history. With every new mousetrap, there's somebody who misuses it for something.
Of course. Yeah.
Right?
And with every technology, it will be. I mean, look when the internet first came out. It's like,
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, this is brilliant. The scammers, right on it. Like new ways of doing scams, and now that is through the roof, right?
Yeah.
The AI open
How many people actually know a Nigerian priest, or a Nigerian prince that needed money? You know what I mean? So,
but now, like, if you can create a video of someone's granddaughter that looks and sounds like them, and you're, requesting ransom, not them, it's a completely fake thing. Like, that's possible now, and that is scary. That is scary.
And I mean, we all have to learn. We had to learn how to use pagers. We had to learn how to use cell phones. We had to learn how to use the internet. We had to learn how to use Google and YouTube and all the other innovations, so that they would benefit and enhance our existence. And I totally get that. But I just, being a creator, I'm in a certain space, and I have concerns. I'm not against stuff, because I'm not in control. It's going to happen whether I like it or not. But like most people, like yourself, right? You are an entrepreneur. You're an innovator. You have figured out a lane that you can get in, and you're developing stuff using the technology. And that's really, I think, from an artist's perspective, from, whether you be a poet or a report writer, a reporter for a newspaper or a television station, or a singer-songwriter, you just want to be able to use it in a way that benefits you personally. Right.
And that you can actually make a living on.
Well, that's what I meant. I mean, that's what I mean. It'd be great if, maybe AI will help us cure cancer. Great. That'll be great for the microbiologist who has all the knowledge of what has come before, and now has another tool to help them find things.
Right.
So I get that part. But in every aspect, I mean, just like the doctor who can find the cure for ALS or cancer, there's somebody out there who's going to be able to find whatever the next innovative form of fentanyl is going to be.
Right.
And, that's the way it's always been. I don't see any reason. Nobody's convinced me that the world is going to straighten up and fly right just because we now have artificial intelligence.
It's important to hear both sides, and a lot of
Exactly.
times in the media,
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of the people that are in charge, that are running the show when it comes to AI, they paint it in more of a everything is, unicorns and rainbows, and they don't talk about real consequences on real people. And so I tend to like to not go that route and play devil's advocate and look at both sides. I can definitely see how it has helped my creative process. I will
Oh,
speak
yeah.
to that. It has been a game changer when it came to creating the platform that I did, right? From proof
Yeah.
of concept and being able to communicate in a clear and concise way to my developers
Right.
and have them build the vision that was in my head, rather than doing the old school way of storyboarding it out. And, that would have taken months, and now you can do it in like a day. So
Yeah.
of course that's great, right? But there's also, what does that mean for the artists or animators that are going to be out of work because of this now streamlined process? That is the downside of it, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah, seeing both sides of it is fine. You and I have gone round and round and round and round about this, and it's nothing personal. I have questions just like you have questions. Your perspective is different from mine because you've discovered a path, and you can walk that path. You can identify that path. There are more of me who are older who haven't figured out how they fit in. There were people who, back in the day, there were people who were sure that the motorized automobile was a fluke and everybody would go back to riding horses. What happened to them? And what happened to the people who used to pick crops by hand? Machines were made, those people didn't have a job. Innovation it's part of the development of mankind.
Mhm. And it gets uncomfortable until you find your place in it, and some people never do. And
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just looking for the answer. Let's put it that way. I get it. There's all sorts of uses for it, but back to the hammer and the nail. People forget hammer's a pretty good tool to keep next to your bedside if you're worried about somebody breaking into your house, because then it becomes a defensive weapon, or it becomes an offensive weapon.
Yeah, it's all how you use it.
It's all in how you use it, and they have to be discussed, and nothing cancels out all of the good or all of the bad.
Right.
It's got to be in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer's always been in the middle. Right now, the country is trying to figure out whatever happened to the middle. Still only one species of human being on the planet, and therefore, we all have something in common. And when we find it, it's one of the things that socially binds us together. When you come into an airport at 1,000 feet, everybody looks the same. I try to develop a way of determining the greatest similarity between every human being on the planet, and then to drive that as a unifying thing that would incorporate everybody. Now, I'll leave you with this. My father had an 8th grade education, but he said some of the smartest things. And what comes to mind in this arena is there are a lot of things in this world I can do without. Information is not one of them.
Well, thank you so much again, and I will see you on the other side.
Thanks so much for having me, and I wish nothing but success and ponies and rainbows for you.